a principal engineer for Lighting on Demand, a research facility for directly exploring the large-scale physics of natural lighting. He's going to be talking about resurrecting the plasma cannon to extend its range with modern capacitors, with reviving and firing the Lorentz Plasma Cannon. Greg Leyh.
Hi, everyone. It's still dead. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming out today. My name is Greg Leyh. I'm an enthusiast of sorts for plasma physics, both from natural origins and large-scale artificial origins. Today, I'd like to talk about two experiments I've worked on. The first one is called the Lorentz Plasma Cannon, and the second one is a set of 120-foot tall Tesla coils to try to explore an effect called relativistic runaway breakdown. If you'd like to find out more about the stuff I've been working on, I've been doing this since the time where three-letter URLs were available free for the taking. So check out LOD.org for more information. How many people here remember Survival Research Laboratories from San Francisco? Okay, quite a few. This project involves a bit of archaeology. Back in the day, when I lived at SRL, I built this plasma cannon to shoot at hostile machines in the shows. It lasted a very short time before the storage capacitors, which were from a junkyard, finally ruptured. Recently, though, I got a chance to rebuild this machine and run it at higher energies. So I made a short video of that. Let me show that. If I can figure out how to handle my technology. Have you ever wanted to throw a lightning bolt at something? Well, as it turns out, it's technically quite possible to do. Today we're going to fire this directed energy device that I built a while back. I call it the Lorentz cannon. The cannon is supported by a 240,000 volt pulse forming tower called a Marksbank, which delivers an electrical power pulse of several gigawatts to the 30-barrel armature gun mounted on top. The gun then initiates a plasma channel through the air at current levels found in natural lightning and can direct this plasma channel towards any grounded target. Now you might be wondering, why would anyone build such a thing? Well, back in the day when I lived at Survival Research Labs, my task was to make electrical devices that could somehow interact with the machines. But these machines were often quite violent and unpredictable, and they were usually loaded with weapons and explosives. So how could you arm an electrical device to survive in such a hostile environment? The answer? Use pulsed power. And if that doesn't work, use more pulsed power. Now, capacitor banks are a cheap and cheerful way to blast objects with hundreds of megawatts, or shower large areas of machines with molten metal. But to blast an object with capacitors usually involves running very heavy cables, and dragging these heavy cables up to a fast and mobile machine wouldn't be very practical at all. So I wondered, could you somehow direct a lightning bolt at a hostile machine instead? I'd read about lightning researchers who could direct lightning bolts to the ground by firing rockets trailing a thin wire. But how can a hair-thin wire possibly carry tens of thousands of amps? This is where the Lorentz force comes to the rescue. When you pass current through a wire, a magnetic field forms around it. Lorentz found that this field produces a force that compresses the conductor, which increases with the square of the current. Now normally, if you tried to pass 10,000 amps through a thin wire, it would instantly vaporize. But if the current rises fast enough, the Lorentz force grows faster than the explosive force, and it contains the hot plasma into a super dense channel. It's a great trick, but there's a catch. In order to get the current to rise that fast, you need to hit it with a rather large voltage pulse, and a fast one to boot. Now this is easy for a storm cloud to do, since it has hundreds of millions of volts available, but I wondered, could mere mortals pull off such a feat? As luck would have it, SRL had recently rescued a bunch of 20,000 volt capacitors from the scrapyard. But some quick calculations revealed that we needed over 120,000 volts to produce a fast enough edge. So to get 120,000 volts out of 20,000 volt caps, I borrowed the Marksbank approach used to power the Z machine. Now a Marksbank is a clever way to multiply voltage by almost any amount. Here's how it works. First, all of the caps get charged in parallel to 20,000 volts through the liquid ballast tubes. Then an array of spark gaps fires them in series, effectively multiplying the original voltage by the number of levels. So, I started on the Marksbank design and stacked all of the 20,000 volt caps that we had into an 8-foot high Marksbank weighing 4,000 pounds. Then, Tim Wellington and I started on the plasma gun itself, which featured a heavy brass front striker plate for the high current plasma channel and 30 barrels for good measure, which seemed enough for a full SRL show. For acquiring targets on the killing floor, we gave the cannon actuators for both panning and tilting, and an aiming laser located in the central tube. Then we assembled all of the cannon parts in the SRL yard and tried some test shots. It worked! And it trashed my black and white Vidicon camera in the process. But at full capacitor voltage, the gun could only create a stable plasma channel about 15 feet long. So of course, we kept turning the voltage up, increasing the range, but unfortunately, the scrapyard caps were already at their end of life, and stressing them to 120% quickly resulted in many violent capacitor failures. So we needed to find new and better caps, and lots of them. But turns out they weren't cheap. And even used, just one of these energy storage caps cost more than my pickup. Well, it took me a minute to find another set of capacitors, but I finally had the good fortune to come across these. Here in the future, there are much beefier third-generation capacitors available, allowing more than double the drive voltage of the old bank, and peak currents well into the range of lightning strikes. So let's pick up where we left off. The ranging test back then yielded a 25-foot range, but by overloading the old caps to 120,000 volts. Today, let's see if we can reach 35 feet with 150,000 volts. I'll be operating the cannon and the Marksbank from the relative safety of the operator's console here, but with heavy eye and ear protection nonetheless. So first we acquire the target, then start charging the Marksbank. The top scale on this high voltage divider is calibrated to show the final output voltage. 150,000 volts is right about here. Okay, the bank is charged and ready to fire. 3, 2, 1. Ah, that familiar shockwave. I just hope the neighbors aren't too upset. Looks like I need to adjust the aim compensator upwards a bit. At this energy, the shockwave easily rips the target away and leaves a bit of a flame even. You can definitely tell that a stable plasma channel formed since it blew a hole in the plywood, and the peak current reached tens of thousands of amperes, and the Marksbank completely discharged its energy, and it was loud as hell. The echo off those buildings about a half mile from here kind of sounded like distant thunder. Now let's try doubling the energy delivered to the target. 210,000 volts is about double the energy of 150,000 volts. Our meter here only goes to 200,000, but it'll still give us a good estimate. 3, 1. It looks like doubling the energy had an effect. As we can see, the target has now achieved a high state of division. But how did this happen? We can discover why by slowing down the video about 6,000 times. With double the energy, the shockwave has now gone supersonic, with wooden shrapnel departing at about 1,200 feet per second. The target simply can't move out of the way in time and is shredded to bits. Finally, how effective is the plasma cannon against electronics hidden inside hostile machines? This TV that I found in e-waste should provide a good indication. The cathode ray tube still lights up, which will provide us with useful diagnostics. Okay, we're ready to fire with a full 210,000 volts on the bank. 3, 2, 1. The plasma channel didn't penetrate the front of the CRT, but simply went around it and connected directly with the deflection circuits inside. Those circuits then launched through the top of the television. Here's a close-up of the plasma channel connecting with the TV in slow motion. Note that at this speed, we can actually watch the electron beams scanning out the test pattern on the screen. The electronics hidden inside the TV were adversely affected by the plasma channel. So I was surprised at just how fast the plasma cannon range scaled with increasing drive voltage, and how much explosive force the shockwave can deliver to a target. The data suggests that a plasma cannon with just a 30-foot high Marks tower could achieve a quarter-mile range. That would be a fun follow-up project indeed, but I'll have to save that one for after I win the lottery. So there were quite a few people that commented on this video, and a common question was, what can you do to increase the range of this? As it turns out, there's a relatively recent theory proposed by two physicists called Gorevic and Zybin called relativistic runaway breakdown. And their theory it holds a possibility towards increasing the length of plasma discharges 10 to 20 times what you would normally expect from classical electrical theory. What I'd like to do now is describe a way to possibly pursue that theory and figure out what's actually practical, possible. Their theory starts out with a definition of an area in a storm cloud called a creation point. That's where lightning starts. Their theory proposes that you need at least 80 meters of distance, and along this distance, you need 200,000 volts per meter electric field strength. Now, this is interesting because normally you need about 2 million volts per meter to break down air and start a discharge. But using this relativistic trick that they propose, you only need about 1/10 of that. So for any given voltage, you could produce a much longer arc. Now, 200,000 volts per meter times 80 meters is about 16 million volts end to end for this creation point. Now, you might look at that 16 million volts and say, hey, that's not completely crazy to generate that here on the ground and try to get this process going, through artificial means. The way I would like to try to do this is to build 2 Tesla towers, and the reason you would have 2 is because it breaks the 16 million volt problem in half, to where now you only need 8 million volts per tower, oppositely phased. To support 8 million volts, these towers need to be about 121 feet, because that's what normal plastics can support, if they're reasonably clean. And then the center-to-center distance of the 2 towers is about 317 feet to support this channel. Now, I thought that if I'm going to build 120-foot tall Tesla towers, before I go into that, here's some details of the tower. The top electrode is about 75 feet in diameter. It's an inflatable toroid. That's the easiest way by far to build structures of this size. Here in the middle, these are the sections of the secondary that generate the voltage. And the whole thing is supported by an inflatable silo in the middle that can lift about 15,000 pounds at 0.5 psi. Down below, there is the base that supports all the equipment. It's built onto a 30-foot flatbed. Here in the middle is a star frame that supports these columns, which support all the secondary windings when they're down below. And in the middle, there's a dance floor of sorts that will resolve all of the pneumatic pressures of the tower. Looking in closer, we can see there's 10 high-pressure blowers that they provide the pressure for the tower to keep it up. The primary winding is this cone around the center that energizes the tower. And that primary is driven by 12 220 kilowatt drivers. There's 6 here, 6 here. They're controlled by a control system on the back. And the blowers themselves are grouped into 3 sets, driven by 3 variable frequency drives, which in turn are driven by 3 generators here and 6 propane tanks. Now, I thought that if I'm going to build a 120-foot tower, I should at least try to build a 3rd scale prototype. And if that utterly fails, then there's no way a 120-foot tower would work. So here's the 40-foot prototype I built a while back. It's fully functional. And even though it's a 3rd scale prototype, it turned out to be the world's largest by far, larger than the Electrum coil. It's fully inflatable. That structure will support about 700 pounds. It runs up to 3 million volts and can throw 50-foot arcs outwards to the ground. Okay. Here's a shot of it running at full bore. I'm kind of hunkered down here, and you can hear that I turned it down partway through the shot because I thought it was going to strike me. wait till the end, please. I've learned quite a bit from running this third scale prototype, and now we've pulled the trigger and we're building the full scale models. And 1 second mortgage later, parts are starting to show up. So, anyone have questions?
Thank you. Going back to the plasma cannon, 2 questions. One, I noticed on the control panel there was some sort of like redundancy with the firing, like fire A, fire B. What was that for? And then 2, is there any sort of supercooling used, like nitrogen?
There's 30 barrels, and they're in 2 concentric rings with 15 positions. A and B are the 2 rings.
I see. Cool. And then is there any hypercooling or supercooling with liquid nitrogen to improve efficiency, or does that not apply to plasma?
It doesn't need the cooling since it's pulse power.
Okay.
If it was continuous, yeah, you would need some serious cooling.
Awesome. Thank you.
How much did
I'm sorry. The person with the microphone, I guess. Go ahead.
How much did the third size prototype cost, and how much is the full sized one going to cost?
Oh, I didn't keep track. It was pretty cheap, though, since I didn't have any money. And this whole thing has been a great exercise towards building it by the most economical means possible. I think she had a question.
Hey, I'm sorry. I was just curious whether or not the one you've already built is the biggest Tesla coil that's ever been made yet?
Well, this third scale prototype is the largest working one in existence. And the one before that was Electrum, which was a coil I built in 1998 for a sheep ranch in New Zealand. And that one is still operational as well. The fellow who commissioned it ended up installing it 50 feet from his house, which was kind of interesting. He likes lightning.
So I have 2 questions. One, you sound awfully normal talking about this. It's like something I expect, they laughed at my experiments in the university. I'll show them, But
Oh, they did.
so is that, these 2 towers, they're transmitting through free space, correct?
They're near field.
Okay. And with the Lorentz cannon where you have the little wire, is the distance primarily, is it primarily limited by your voltage, by your current, by the wire itself?
It's a good question. It's limited by the loop inductance and the voltage you have available.
Okay. So how does the wire itself affect the loop inductance?
The wire diameter doesn't, but its distance above the ground does.
How so?
It forms an area, like a kind of a triangular shaped area. And the longer the range, the voltage you need rises faster than the inductance, because now that it's becoming a narrow triangle. And that helps the range go up faster with voltage.
Got time for a couple more questions?
So what are your plans for use of the Tesla coils at full scale? Yeah.
Oh, I suppose it has to have a practical use.
Or not,
Well,
or not. It could just be a conversation starter.
I actually have 2 main scientific motivations for this. One is to study relativistic runaway breakdown. Right now it's a theory. There's been no way to practically prove it or look at it or see what the details are. The other one is, if you run the coils in phase and hook them to a balloon that's, say, several kilometers up, it looks like there may be viable resonant modes between here and the ionosphere to possibly transmit power.
I see. Thank you.
Couple more questions? Raise your hand.
There's one behind you.
Oh.
So.
Do you think there's any limits in coil size or arc length that you think will never surpass because of physics?
There are limits in coil size for pulsed coils. Eventually it becomes so big that its natural frequency is too low to support a reasonable pulse rate. For CW coils, you can make it as big as you want.
One last question?
Are you taking internships?
I'd love to, but my insurance company would probably howl at that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Let's give Greg a hand.